Before we get to the interview, I'd like to tell you about a special offer to subscribe to the Business Observer, which covers essential business news in Florida every day online and every Friday with a print edition. Unlock every Business Observer article on our website and app for only $1 a week. Sign up today and stay up to date with all the business news you need to be better at business. Go to businessobserverfl.com/subscribe. Hello and welcome to the From the Corner Office podcast. I'm Mark Gordon, managing editor of the Business Observer. Today's guest is John Martin, managing partner of the Fort Myers Mighty Mussels. John, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Good to be here.
Awesome. So that's a great intro. Just saying Mighty Mussels, I think, is cool enough. But tell us what is the Mighty Mussels?
Yeah, so the Fort Myers Mighty Mussels, formerly the Fort Myers Miracle franchise, has been around for a long time, Mark, but we are the Class A affiliate for the Minnesota Twins. We play in the Florida State League, and our players their contracts are owned by the Minnesota Twins. They are prospective future Twins.
Awesome. So basically you run a baseball team. I mean, you're literally living a childhood dream. You run a baseball team.
Mark, that's right. Now, I got to say, when I was growing up and playing wiffle ball in the backyards in Flanagan, Illinois, and we thought about what it was to own a baseball team, we had in our mind the Mets or the Cubs or the Twins or the Royals or something like that. This wasn't exactly what I was thinking,
right?
But my goodness, you're right. We do own a baseball team, and yes, I do pinch myself occasionally.
That's pretty awesome. And you and I just spoke briefly off camera about rivalries and teams. And some people, listeners of this podcast, have heard I am a big Mets fan, lifelong Mets fan. You grew up as a Cubs fan, so we both kind of know misery, I think, to some extent, which is part of it, right? Part of being a baseball fan.
Well, Mark, unfortunately for me, a lot of the misery that I lived was at the hands of the Mets in the late 80s
yes.
and early 90s. I had the good fortune to meet Dwight Gooden a year and a half ago, and I told him, I said, I'm pretty sure his career record against my beloved Cubs was like 28-3 or something ridiculous like that. So my boys didn't have much luck in the late 80s against those Mets.
It's funny how, as baseball fans, we're going to get into a little bit more of your career in a second, but and I think sports people talk about, they remember the losses more than the wins. And it's funny because I was just telling my 15-year-old son the other day that the Mets had a Mets killer in the 90s named Chipper Jones, who played for the Braves. And Chipper Jones was so good against the Mets that he named one of his kids Shea after Shea Stadium, because that's how good he was. So it's like a lifelong troll against the Mets. So we remember those things, right? We remember who beat us as a fan.
That is true. It's hard to get the ecstasy of victory to equal the agony of defeat in sports.
Yes. Yeah. So true. All right. So tell us a little bit about, I know you worked on a farm or grew up in farming agriculture. Tell us, John, about kind of your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I always introduce myself as a farm kid from Illinois. I mean, where we're from is a small town called Flanagan, Illinois. It's a town of 1,100 people, zero stoplights.
No stoplights.
And we are surrounded by oceans of corn and soybeans. So that's how we grew up. And I joked earlier about playing wiffle ball in the backyard. That's what we did. We got all the neighborhood kids together and we played wiffle ball for fun in the 80s, right, when we were growing up. But my opportunity in the world, Mark, was in agriculture. Both sides of my family, my mom's family and my dad's family, were successful in the farming and agricultural world, and that's where our opportunity was. We've been successful at growing, running, managing, operating a large farm for row crop farming in Central Illinois, and as that has really had the ability to stretch its legs a little bit and grow into the last 10 years, what we've turned it into, I've had the ability to turn day-to-day operations over to my brother and get to do some of the stuff that we really love down here with the baseball team.
And what else did you do? I mean, what was sort of the transition between, working on the farm, and when did you actually move to Southwest Florida?
So the way that it worked was my brother and I, we grew up when you're in a farm family, you grow up long hours, 7 days a week, that stuff through your whole life. So my brother and I, we grew up that way. And when we took over the reins of the farm day to day, that was in 2008. So we grew that farm. We worked hard at it, and additionally, on the side, I'll call it, we both had jobs in corporate America. I worked for Monsanto and then Bayer as a sales rep and a brand lead in the corporate environment. And my brother worked for a seed company as well, all the while we were growing up the farm operation.
Right.
So when the opportunity came to become a part of the Fort Myers Mighty Mussels, we came on as a minority owner initially. So for
Okay.
the first year and a half, we kind of got to observe, and then we had the ability to take over the majority share where I became managing partner. So there was kind of a multi-year transition there, Mark, where I learned this business as well. And I still spend half my time on the farm back in Illinois as we speak.
Get to a little bit of both. So, what does a managing partner of a minor league baseball team do? Tell us about your day to day and what your responsibilities are.
Yeah, so Mark, I'm responsible for the business results on behalf of the ownership group. Our ownership group has two minority partners, and then my brother and I own the majority of the team. So on behalf of them, I'm the guy, boots on the ground, day to day, that is responsible for the business results. So I am doing everything from working with our largest partners and sponsors to establish a rapport and create win-win situations for both the ball team and our partner sponsors, to doing media events, not unlike what we're doing this morning,
Sure.
and then also being around to kind of set the guidance for where we go. I always say, Mark, I have the ability to screw up a lot of stuff here if I get too involved in the day-to-day details, because we have a tremendous general manager and president that takes care of that. But what we can do is we can think strategically 3 and 5 years, away, and that a lot of those thoughts is really what falls on my shoulders as managing partner.
Interesting. So you're looking ahead, whereas the manager in the field is like, all right, who are we pitching today? Who's playing third base? Things like that, day to day on the field. And talk a little bit about the industry you're in. It seems like it comes and goes, but minor league baseball's having a little bit of a moment, right? You have the Savannah Bananas and all the ESPN documentaries, and what is the sort of landscape of the industry you're in right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if we were talking about agriculture, I know the industry
Mhm.
inside and out and every little detail. And in baseball, I'm still learning, Mark, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. But it's what's interesting about it is we do not, as an owner of this franchise, we do not own the player contracts, right? What we own is the right to put on the performance, the show around the game. The players' contracts are property of the Minnesota Twins. So their paycheck is not coming from us down here, yet we are reliant upon them for providing the product that
Interesting.
we
Right.
build the game around. So that's an interesting business arrangement. It works. It's kind of a situation that works well for everybody because the Minnesota Twins don't have time. They're running their own game up in the Twin Cities for 40,000 fans.
Right.
They don't have time to run their single A, double A, triple A, et cetera. So with all of that being said, the landscape shrunk from 160 teams to 120 in 2021. And that was a seismic change in the way that minor league baseball works with Major League
Yeah.
Baseball. As we emerge from that, we are seeing tremendous opportunities here as Major League Baseball has streamlined a lot of operations. They have brought a lot of facilities up to standards so that there's equality across the board on
Yeah.
facility standards and things like that. And quite frankly, attendance numbers, revenue numbers, all of the business metrics we pay attention to are shooting higher right now.
Yeah.
So it is a good time for minor league baseball. You're exactly right.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So, all right. So, you have this business and agriculture, and you're in sales as well. Just talk general about leadership. What are some things that stand out to you that you've learned about how, the characteristics of a good leader over your career? What stands out?
Well, I think that it's really important, Mark, that you look at the world. I read a book one time that talked about if you were Santa Claus, what would you do? And it's super simple. Well, the one thing, you make sure you keep your reindeer fed. And the second thing is, when the elves talk, listen.
Yeah.
And, I think that is overly simplified, yet totally applicable to things that make the world go round here. To be an effective leader, you got to think the way that the employees think, because without them, you've got nothing. And so not only do you have to have a good workplace environment and good culture and all those buzzwords we hear about right now, but you have to genuinely care and genuinely look at the world from the shoes of the people that are enabling everything you're trying to accomplish. That's number one. And then number two, get down in the trenches with them, right? When you get a chance in minor league baseball, roll a tarp.
Yeah.
When everybody's rolling a tarp and it's the fourth one of the day and it's fairly miserable, be down there with them and do it with them.
Yeah.
On the farm, don't tell them how to do the dirtiest job on the farm, show them.
Yeah.
And that's a good way to build respect and rapport. And those are really overly simplified, but very effective things that have led to some of my success that we've seen.
Yeah, you're right. It's simple, but it's not everybody does it. I know the publisher of the Observer Media Group, Emily Walsh. There's a famous story. It's her father is still our CEO, and her first job at this company was cleaning bathrooms when she was a teenager. So, and she worked her way up to publisher. So the fact that she can do all those things shows a lot to the other people in the company, right? That they're with you.
That's right. Probably the best example I have is from the farm side, where, there's a lot of long hours and there is a lot of days when you're in your mid-20s and all of your buddies are having a couple cool ones and having the time of their life on a Friday night, and you're out there in the middle of a field making a couple more rounds to get the job done. And it might be 1:00 in the morning and you're tired and you're dirty and you want to go home. Well, at that moment, I want to be out there with the guys. I don't want to be sitting at home or at that party. I want to be out there with them, because that's where success is made, in my opinion.
Is there, I'm sure there is, but who are some mentors of yours that you learned a lot from about leadership, or some of the philosophies you just shared, whether it was back on the farm or in your different stages of your career? Who stands out in your mind?
The two primary ones that stand out, Mark, are my two grandfathers. They both had a very different way of doing things. But one of them was what you would consider a traditional owner-operator in agriculture, and one of them was more of a business person, investor, operator. And they were very different, but the one thing was the way they treated people. They treated people like that was the only, if my grandfathers were talking to someone, they acted like that was the only person in the world at that moment. They never looked past anybody, and they really respected people and saw the good in people. And that's something that really always stuck with me. And so my two grandfathers is the simple answer to the question. And then, of course, I've had many mentors in baseball and agriculture and sales over the years that you pick up tidbits from along the way.
Yeah, it's one of those things too. I bet at the same token, we were talking on another podcast episode about sometimes you learn what not to do, right? Especially as you get into, you mentioned some of the big companies. You work for some big giants in terms of the agriculture industry. You probably saw some things. Hey, when I'm a leader, I'm not going to do that.
Mark, that's I'm glad you brought that up, because that hits really close to home. You're absolutely right. When I spent time in boardrooms, and oftentimes I would hear experts come in and talk about where they saw the world going. Here's your peek behind the curtain for the next 5 years in agriculture. And I would think about it from the farmer's perspective, the customer's perspective. And I'm thinking, have you ever even talked to a farmer? You're telling these people how they're going to react, how they're going to, create their future in the next 3 to 5 years. And I'm pretty sure you've never stepped on a farm like that. It's so simple at its core, yet it's a huge swing and a miss for big corporations in whatever industry they're in.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
let's pay attention to the guy writing the check, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's sort of a typical like flyover. They're wearing their suits and their flyover states. It loosely reminds me of, we're recording this in early May, and there's a sort of viral video going out right now about this young boy at a tractor show. Have you seen this?
I have not.
It's just amazing because this like 7-year-old boy is like at this tractor show talking like tractor lingo to these like big bulky tractor salesmen, and it's just like a fun look at like, you know, what kids are up to today, and he's got all the lingo down, and that kid is probably better than some of the people in the boardroom that you just described because he knew the language.
Yes. And that's so much. And then when those people think they're going to get one over on him, they're in for a surprise, right, Mark?
Yes. Awesome. So, all right, going back to your career as well, are there, you know, mistakes or, you know, missteps, bad decisions that you made that sort of stand out as looking back lessons learned?
Yeah. I mean, certainly we early on, we were young and we were willing to take a lot of risks. And I think that in general that was a good decision, but some of those risks didn't work out, and in some of those failures we saw some of our best lessons for the future. I'll share one example, which was, I mean, this is going to date me a little bit, but back in year 1999, I was in college. I'm watching the agricultural markets go up and down, and the
Yeah.
charts and the graphs and all that. And I was specifically looking at soybeans, and I just remember thinking, they are at an absolute bottom, and they have to go up. And I invested a little money, that probably more than I should have. And you know, I was in college, I didn't have a lot of money, but
Yeah.
I put a big, for all this laundry list of reasons why I was 100% sure that they were at a multi-year bottom. Those soybeans, I can remember it like it was yesterday. They got down to about 475, and I bought. And then it got down to 472, and I bought more, and I was going to be a millionaire in the next month. Mark, I was
You were
sure
on
of
your
it.
way.
I was on my way. And then they kept going down and down and down, and they went down to about 455, at which point I had lost all the money I had in them. I needed to get out of the contract. So I did that. And I literally hit the all-time low for the year of 2000. I think it was my trade, Mark. And anybody can look back at the
John
November
Martin.
2014
Martin made
chart.
the market.
Yes. But for all of my laundry list of reasons, Mark, the market did turn around and it did go up. And I was right the entire time.
Right.
Everything I said was right. And I still lost my butt
Yeah.
on that trade. So even though you can be completely and totally right on everything you're thinking and doing, sometimes timing is the most important thing. And that can be more luck than skill.
Yeah.
And that's one lesson that really sticks with me. And it's something, you know, we bought this baseball team in the middle of COVID, in the middle of a year that did not exist
Yeah.
for minor league baseball. And sometimes it's just better to be lucky than good. You know, timing is important.
Sure. Timing is definitely important in really any business. And so going back to the Mighty Muscles, you know, you talked about, you know, 3 to 5 year plan, not even that far out, but what can we expect not only on the field, but what are some of the things that you're looking at as a sort of business proposition, business happenings the next year, the next season, this season?
So, Mark, we have seen, you know, there's a really unique place for minor league baseball to be a platform that really brings the community together. And so we've started a charitable arm, a charitable foundation called Muscle Up for Southwest Florida. And the idea of that is we have the ability to really shine a unique spotlight on groups, organizations, and help them raise some funds. Children's Advocacy Center comes to mind, United Way comes to mind, local little leagues come to mind, where we have the ability and we can partner with them to shine a light on whatever they're doing, help them raise some money, present them with one of those great big game checks on home plate, and do it in a very inclusive way. We live in a world now where polarization is kind of just part of the game. It's just table stakes at this point. And, you know, liking your local minor league baseball team doesn't need to be polarizing. We have a platform that can bring people together. And I think that if we truly use that platform to shine a positive light on worthy causes for the local community, I think we can do some real good for individuals, for groups, and for all of Southwest Florida. So, in the 3 to 5 year plan, I want to be a leader in that space for Southwest Florida. And then also, we want to continue to build out the game around the game, the entertainment around the game, whether it's bands or concerts or baseball card shows or celebrity appearances. We want to be the place that people, they hear Hammond Stadium and they're like, hey, those guys probably have something fun and cool going on over there, in addition to good baseball with top prospects.
That's awesome. I will, you let me know, John, when the baseball card show is happening. I will be there. That was, I worked at Friendly's and McDonald's restaurants in New York growing up, but my real passion was baseball card shows. A buddy of mine, we went to all these hotels and motels on Saturdays and Sundays and sold our baseball cards.
We must have grown up in a very similar era, because that was, from age about 8 to 12, I think my mind was 95% parked on baseball cards, Mark.
100%. We could have a whole podcast about that. I mean, the 1984 Don Mattingly rookie, right? That was like the big card to have, right? We're probably very similar in growing up in ages. That's pretty awesome. Love it.
Don't forget about the 1989 Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck.
Yes,
right?
The Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. Yes.
It was like, man, you had arrived when you got that one.
Yes, for sure. Awesome. This is great, John. Before we let you go, we have 3 rapid fire questions for you. One's going to be super specific. I think I can only do this on this podcast. Okay, first one. Who is your all-time favorite Chicago Cub?
Sean Dunston.
Ooh, Sean. Why Sean? Oh, he was good in the 80s. He was...
He was the shortstop. I played shortstop in Little League. He was kind of disappointing when all things put together, but the flashes were brilliant,
yes.
Mark.
Yeah, I was doing research. I was looking you up before doing some research on the podcast. I thought you might have said Ryan Sandberg. I was trying to guess your age and when you were at your peak fandom. I thought, but Sean Dunston's a good one though. Yeah. Excellent. All right, what movie will you stop what you're doing whenever it comes on TV to watch?
Dumb and Dumber 2. So the world loves Dumb and Dumber,
yes.
And they all thought Dumb and Dumber 2 was ridiculous. Now, I have a juvenile sense of humor, to say the least, Mark, and I contend that Dumb and Dumber 2 would be the greatest comedy of all time had it come out first.
Interesting. I don't know if I've seen the first. I don't know if I saw Dumb and Dumber 2. I'm missing out.
I would put that one on the list. I laugh like a little kid with tears running down my face at certain parts of that movie.
Awesome. All right, last question. Would you rather sail around the world or travel North America in a van?
Sail around the world. I love boats.
Excellent. Grew up on a farm, but sailing around the world. I love it. Excellent. John Martin, Fort Myers Mighty Mussels, thank you so much for joining us on the From the Corner Office podcast.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. This was a lot of fun. My first podcast ever. So thank you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to the Business Observer From the Corner Office podcast. I'm your host, Mark Gordy. This podcast was produced by Reed Corley of the Corley Company in Sarasota. To hear more episodes of From the Corner Office podcast, go to businessobserverfl.com.